give you an idea of what I think what happens for the typical paper that gets a C or D. Whether it doesn't matter how long before the due date you do it, but what happens, you say, okay, I got to write this paper. I go and I look at the instructions. I see how long the paper has to be. I see the requirements, like I have to pick 4 things from the material to put in my speech. I have to do the sections like first who I am and the other side, things like that. And here's where you start on a good paper, but you don't carry it forward to a good paper. You go to the content that I provide, you say, okay, let me find 4 things that I can comment on. And you pick those 4 real quick. And then you start writing your paper, and you start kind of doing it kind of fast. My name is blah, blah, blah. I'm a Republican, as lots of you are. And these are the reasons why I'm a Republican. And this is how you bring the material into your paper, which, remember, should also sound like a speech. And that when you read it aloud, it sounds good. What you do is you go to the material, you pick something from it that you know I'll recognize as something that's in the material. You make a comment on it where you just tell me what you think, and then you move on. For instance, you say something like, it does seem that in the past there have been a lot of problems with labor and management relations in industry, but I believe those days are gone and there's too many regulations on corporations and businesses now. And we should reduce regulations. And then you go on. And you see, what you did when you didn't really tell me anything besides, you saw a section heading in the material that had to do with labor relations, and you knew your gut reaction. It didn't give any evidence of actually reading it very deeply and trying to find the interesting things in it for you. And it doesn't show any effort of bringing the material into your paper in a way that flows nicely, in a way that's pleasing to read, and so on. But if you go to that material and you really read it several times, think about it, make a draft, edit it, find different ways of wording it and talking about it. If you don't do those other edits, just do that gut reaction. Here's what it says, I disagree with it because I'm so-and-so, on to the next thing. That's a C or D paper, especially when you get to the end of the paper. And this is going to be the hardest thing for you. Is you're finished with the paper, you read it once, you read it twice, and you say, I think it looks pretty good. If you ever write anything and you say, think it looks pretty good, you're probably not very good. Because you're writing a paper about you. And we're all vain. Nobody's vain. I understand it. Anytime we write things about us, we like it. Because we like ourselves. And one reason I have you write the paper is because I know people like writing about themselves. It makes for a more pleasing experience generally. And you write better when you write about yourself. It's something that you know. But you're going to find it and we all have this problem that whenever we write something, we don't like criticism of it. And we're all like that. Even famous novelists like myself. And so never be, if you want a B, or especially if you want an A, it takes far more than 2 drafts. Depending on some people do one draft and redo it. Some people make lots of little tweaks along the way, but you've got to work on it. And the way to know when you have an A paper is when you read it aloud, it sounds good. It's got a nice flow to it. It's a bit captivating. You sound interesting when you read it. And you bring in the material from the website that shows that not only did you read, say, this paragraph very well, but you know how this paragraph connects to a paragraph 6 ones down, or to a completely different article. I want to see coherency. I don't want just statements of opinion. I want to see evidence of a very well thought out opinion. And remember, in the end, you don't have to agree with everything you said. Sometimes you don't know what you believe until you express things differently. Express it. If you have, I've had some students who kind of struggle with how to do it, come see me. We're not having labs this week. Let me know if you want to come by during your labs, and we'll talk about it.
One thing I was going to say is, as far as I know, I'm not grading these papers. I think you're, yeah, he was doing that all himself, so he's the one who does all that. If you want to, you can bring it to me, and I'll just read it over and just give you like an outside opinion of it. Someone who just says, okay, this is where your strong points are, this is where your weak points are, and I'll just give you tips on what you're doing right or wrong. I mean, I won't grade it, I won't make you feel bad, I won't do anything like say where it's wrong or anything like that. I'll just give you an outside opinion of how you're doing and where you might be able to improve. Just anytime, if you're working on it, you want to bring it, bring it by anytime you want. You have my office hours, where my office is at. So that's a service I can provide to you. I won't be grading it. That sounds
yeah, that's good. Okay. Remember, you got homework 7. Most of us did it in class. You can turn in at the end of this class if you want. If you weren't in class last time or the time before the exam, just turn in that class. You got homework back. I brought the homeworks here if you wasn't in lab to get it back. If you think there's an error on it, what I want you to do is bring it to me with a sheet of paper attached to it where you write your name, where you think you should have gotten more credit and why, that kind of thing. We want it in writing from you.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, homework 4 that I gave back. If you think that we graded it wrong, besides the -1 on labels, if it says -1 on labels, remember I gave everybody credit back to that. But besides the -1 on grading, if you think you made an error in grading and you want us to look at it again, you hand it in with a sheet attached to it where you have your name and you tell us where we think we made an error grading and why. What we're going to do now is we're going to talk about this difference between nominal and real prices. Stuff's going to do today is probably kind of easy. We're getting us ready for the difference between nominal and real interest rate, which is absolutely essential if you're going to plan for your retirement and plan for your children's savings and stuff. And what I want to do, our economy is a big messy place, and it hurts your brain just to think about this dynamic, complex world around us. Sometimes if we can find little models of it that make more sense to us, plus a good metaphor for the world, it's very useful. And I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you some scenes from a movie called Stalag 17. It's about prisoner of war camps during World War II. Americans captured and in German war camps. I want you to look out for 2 things mainly. One, I want you to listen to them talk about rations, these food parcels. And they'll say the word parcel, or they'll say the word rations. And also try to look at what they're using as money. And although, because it's a comedy, it does kind of exaggerate the extent to which this happened, look at all the entrepreneurship that goes on within the prisoner of war camp. It is exaggerated, but not by a terrible amount, as we'll see.
Just don't drool on it.
You're not going to eat the shells.
Help yourself. Hey, thanks. What are we going to do with it?
We're going to plant an animal. We're going to grow us a chicken for Christmas.
If I were you, Septon, I'd eat that egg someplace else. Like, for instance, under the barracks.
Coffee looks a little weak today. Come on, Trader Horn. Let's hear it. What'd you give the Krauts for that egg? 45 cigarettes. Price has gone up. That wouldn't be the cigarettes you took us for last night. What was I going to do with them? I only smoke cigars. Nice guy. The Krauts shoot Manfredi and Johnson last night, and the day's out trading with them.
Look, this may be my last hot breakfast on account of they're going to take that stove out of here, so would you let me eat it in peace?
Oh, ain't that too bad? Tomorrow you'll have to suck a raw egg.
Oh, you don't have to worry. He could always trade the Krauts for a 6-burner gas range. Maybe a deep freeze, too.
What's the beef, boy? So I'm trading. Everybody here is trading, so maybe I trade a little sharper. That make me a collaborator?
A lot sharper, Septon. I'd like to have some of that loot you got in those footlockers.
Oh, you would you? Listen, Stoop, the first week I was in this joint, somebody stole my Red Cross package, my blanket, and my left shoe. Well, since then I've wised up. This ain't no Salvation Army. This is everybody for himself. Dog eat dog.
You Stickson.
Don't come off!
Sergeant J.J. Septon. I guess it's about time I told you a few more things about that Septon guy. If I was anything of a writer, I'd send it into the Reader's Digest for one of those most unforgettable characters you've ever met. He was a big-time operator, always hustling, always scrounging. Take, for instance, the horse races. Every Saturday and Sunday, he'd put on horse races. He was the sole owner and operator of the Stalag 17 Turf Club. He was the presiding steward, the chief handicapper, the starter, the judge, the breeder, and his own bookie. He was the whole works, except that I was the stable boy for 5 smokes a day.
Give me equipoise. 10 on the nose. Come on, come on.
10 on Schnickelfritz.
Equipoise.
Schnickelfritz.
Equipoise. Come on, boys. The horses are at the post.
Equipoise.
Equipoise.
10 on Equipoise.
5 on Seabiscuit, and I'll pay you when the Red Cross parcels come in.
No credit.
Have a heart, Septon.
Sorry, it's against the rules of the Racing Commission. Any more bets? Ready, Cookie?
Ready.
Let them go. And they're off and running at Stalag 17.
Another one of his enterprises was the distillery. He ran a bar right in our barracks selling schnapps at 2 cigarettes a shot. The boys called it the flamethrower, but it wasn't really that bad. We brewed the stuff out of old potato peels and once in a while a couple of strings off the Red Cross parcels, just to give it a little flavor. The killadiller, of course, the real bonanza, was when Septon put up the observatory. He scrounged himself some high-powered Kraut lenses and a magnifying mirror and got Ronnie Bigelow from Barracks 2 to put the whole shebang together for a pound of coffee. On a clear day, you could have seen the Swiss Alps. Only who wanted to see the Swiss Alps? It was about a mile away, that Russian delousing shack, but we were right on top of it.
We were supposedly, under the rules of the Geneva Convention, we were supposed to be on a similar diet to those of any soldiers that were stationed in the same region. But even if we had gotten what the German soldiers were getting, it would be a much lower diet than we'd ever been used to, with cabbage soup and potatoes.
During the war, the mission of the IRC, the International Red Cross, was to visit on occasion various prisoners of war camps, both Allied and Axis, to make sure that these Geneva Conventions about the treatment of prisoners of war were being complied with.
They had a so-called sick call, where if you were really bad off, you could have somebody take you up to the lazaret. We had 2 or 3 medical people up there. We only had 1 American doctor. And you didn't go up for minor things. It had to be pretty serious. The only time I ever went was because the flea bites were making me break out in hives. The only advice I got from the doctor was, well, pick off the fleas more often. You know, it's not that we can't give you anything, and we can't kill them, so put up with it.
Part of the IRC's business was to provide certain aid packages containing things like powdered milk, coffee, tea, sugar, tobacco products, things of that nature that would give a little comfort to what was otherwise a pretty rigorous existence.
The Red Cross parcels were, this is where all the trading came in. If we could get a German guard accustomed to smoking American cigarettes, then there was a lot of things that he would do to keep getting American cigarettes.
The Germans knew what was in those aid packages, and in many cases would simply rape those aid packages, take all the tobacco products, take anything that they particularly wanted out of them. Now the prisoners could complain, but the guy who turned the German guards in was going to have a rough time.
Outside of a few stolen things that Germans soldiers had stolen out of our Red Cross parcels, why their only source was to trade with the Americans. Give them something for some of the finer foods, like a can of jam or instant coffee, cigarettes particularly. They were short of the things there the same way we were back in the United States.
Kurtenbach's people didn't really trade. They knew how to spot guards you could trade with, and spot ones you couldn't trade with, because they'd axe you.
Now, this didn't go too high up the line. you know, the sergeant of the guards wouldn't be involved and would have had to have reported anything he knew, but the individual guards were.
I love that little story, and you're going to see me referring to it a lot throughout the rest of this class. And here's what I like about this. There was an economist who was in it wasn't in Stalag 17, but he was another prisoner of war camp. He was an American. And when he came back, he wrote a little article about the markets that developed in the prisoner of war camp. And this is what I think are important. Here's what happened. You have the prisoners, and of course, they don't have anything, but as you saw, they got these things called Red Cross parcels. And in that parcel, every parcel would be the same, and it was one per person every so often. And they all contained the same things. It would contain like biscuits and some chocolate and some bread and some crackers and other stuff, some meats every now and then. And so every prisoner got the same thing, but then every prisoner had different tastes of food. And there were some things in that parcel that a prisoner liked more than others. And what happened was, you know, they were not treated like the Jews in the Holocaust. They were given a lot of freedom. They started trading. And I mean really trade. What happened, they would start noticing that, you know, if I really like biscuits more than chocolate, I can go to this person, he likes chocolate more than biscuits, and I can give him one of my chocolates and he'll give me 3 biscuits. And there's no more income. You know, the total amount of food that went into the camp didn't change. But by trading with each other, both of us became happier. You know, he became happier, otherwise he wouldn't have made the trade. I became happier, otherwise I wouldn't have made the trade. And this went on everywhere, trading constantly all the time, and everybody taking that same amount of stuff and getting more happiness out of it by trading. Now, of course, they started off by bartering, just trying to find someone who had what you wanted, who you thought you might have what they wanted. And there was this problem called the double coincidence of wants, meaning if I had biscuits and I wanted to, or suppose I had chocolate and I wanted to trade it for biscuits, I had to find someone who wanted to trade biscuits for chocolate. And so I had to search for that person. And when I finally found them, yes, we could make that trade, but there was that double coincidence of wants. I had to find the same person or another person who wanted to trade the same goods that I wanted to trade. And this was rather inefficient. Imagine if we didn't have money and we had to just barter for everything. Like for me to get food for my family, I'd have to have someone with food who wanted to trade it for economic pleasure. It wouldn't work well for them. And so it's not surprising that they came up with what every economy has always come up with money. They said, you know what? Everybody likes cigarettes. Almost everybody smokes it. Almost everybody wants it. Cigarettes are small. They're portable. They're storable. Why not use it as money? And so that's what they did. And at first, people... So now I have chocolate. I want to trade it for biscuits. Now I just go and I try to sell my chocolate for cigarettes. And then I take the cigarettes. And then I try to go off and buy some biscuits with it. And at first people started... They'd walk down the center of the barracks and they'd say like, 3 biscuits for 7, meaning I will pay 7 cigs for 3 biscuits, something like that. They would announce it loud, the sale they wanted to make or the buy they wanted to make. But then that's kind of inefficient too. You had lots of people yelling all around. So it's not surprising then that they figured out an even more efficient way. They had a blackboard or chalkboard. And there people would go up and write what they wanted to buy or sell. So I could go up there and write, I wanted to sell 1 chocolate for 7 cigarettes. And then someone who wanted to buy that, they'd come and I'd have my name and my bunk number by it. They'd come write their name and we'd find each other and make the trade. And then I'd take those cigarettes and go to the board and say, I want to buy 3 biscuits for so-and-so. And if someone's willing to sell it, then we make a deal. So we had a market, a real market, on that chalkboard. And that's going to be the metaphor we use for all markets in this class, because we can all envision it. We can all think about it. We can see it in our minds. Now, what we're concerned about today is this difference between real prices and nominal prices. Real prices are like the actual goods you exchange. Like when I buy an iPad, I didn't really, I paid for it with dollar bills, right? The dollar bills are just pieces of paper. In reality, I gave up to get that iPad other stuff you can buy for $400. 400 candy bars, 200 Kindles, 400 copies of The Throne of Four Children. The price goes up to 99 cents after today. All these different things, right? Money is just the efficient way of bartering. But when we all use money, prices become stated in terms of one currency. Instead of saying how many biscuits I want to trade for chocolate, I'm saying how many sticks I want to sell, how many sticks I want to buy out. And these prices that we're used to seeing, the price tag at Walmart, the price tag at McDonald's drive-thru, those are nominal prices, prices stated in money. And we all know there's a big difference between nominal prices and real prices. And as we're going to see, it's inflation. We all know that you can buy far less with a nickel today than your grandparents could. We all know it's a lot easier to get a nickel today. And so in that prisoner of war camp, after they quit barter and start trading in cigarettes, those prices became nominal prices. But in reality, behind it all, it was still barter. But it was just a very efficient form of barter. And there's a lot more to that story. There were imports and exports from the camp. There were middlemen. I mean, it was a real economy that developed. This thing between real and nominal prices, we're going to start on this sheet now. It's going to seem really easy, but it's something you really do need to understand and be prepared for once we go to telling the difference between nominal interest rates and real interest rates. Here's my end game. Listen to a sad story. This is the story I want you to understand. In the 1920s, inflation was very low, and farmers took out loans for, let's say, like 6%, 7%. But they thought there would be some inflation. But instead what happened, farmers took out this loan, they agreed to pay a certain number of dollar bills in the future, but instead of inflation, there was deflation. Prices were going down, including the prices of the crops that they sold. Now all of a sudden they had taken out these loans to pay this many dollar bills 5 years from now, so they were getting less dollar bills from the crops they were selling. And there became a big difference between the nominal interest rate that they hoped they would pay and the real interest rate that they actually paid. And that difference was because of inflation or deflation. And that's why so many farmers went bankrupt right at the beginning of the Great Depression. That was the main reason. And that's why, for some of you who are looking at inflation for the class paper, FDR's main, there's the section for the class paper that talks about FDR. FDR had a very confusing presidency. It seemed like he never really knew what he wanted to do. But the only constant you saw was inflation. FDR wanted inflation. It was because he wanted farmers happy. But to get to that, you've got to do what seemed kind of insignificant cause. So I'm on this practice question sheet. The first one says, and it is as easy as it seems at first. It's getting used to thinking in a different way. In a POW camp, 1 milk trays for 2 butters. What is the real price of milk in terms of butter? And the milk price is 2 butters. 1 milk tray for 2 butters. The price of milk is 2 butters. We're trying not to think in terms of money because we want to remember that what really matters is the goods and services we get to consume, not paper bills. Real prices always have to do with real goods, not paper money. Number 2 says, regarding the previous question, what is the real price of butter in terms of milk? Well, if 1 milk is 2 butters, 1 butter is how much milk? Butter price is 1/2 milk. And how much does it cost to get 1 butter? It costs 1/2 of milk. Number 3, this is a question that can be confusing. And frankly, every semester, once I go to do it again, I always get a little confused at first. So something you want to practice working on. Now, I'm going to show you the way. There are a lot of different ways of answering this question. I'm going to show you the way that I do it. Number 3 says, suppose that cigarettes are used in a POW camp. The price of 1 butter is 3 cigarettes. The price of 1 milk is 2 cigarettes. What is the real price of milk in terms of butter? And you'll notice that number 4 says, what is the real price of butter in terms of milk? And this is what I do. I know I'm going to put 2 little tables right here and then a couple sentences. If you write small, I think you can all fit on a piece of paper. I'm going to write 2 cigs can buy . 2 cigs can buy 1 milk and 2/3 butter. Because butter costs 3 cigarettes. If you only have 2, you're 2/3 the way there. And also 3 cigs can buy 1 butter or 1.5 milk. And for me, once I have those 2 tables, answering this question is really easy. It says, what is the real price of milk in terms of butter? What we're really asking here is, what are the numbers of butter divided by the number of milk that is traded? What is the butters per milk? And you can do it using 2 fractions. I think it's easier to say, we want to know how many butters, like for 1 milk, because the question is, what is the real price of milk in terms of butter? And I notice 1 milk trades for 2/3 butter, so it's like the number of butter, 2/3, number of milk, 1. So the price is going to be 2/3 butter. But also notice this is a way of kind of double checking yourself. If we use this ratio of trades, number of milk, 1.5, number of butter, 1. So both of these are 2/3. These are just terms of trade. So price of milk is 2/3 butter. And you might remember from our trade examples when we do opportunity costs, that reciprocal can often make these questions easier. Number 4 says, regarding the previous question, what is the real price of butter in terms of milk? Now we're wanting to know when trades take place, what is the number of milk that trades per number of butter? And you notice right away that that's the inverse. So if this is 2/3, that must be 3/2. So just to show you these fractions, if we look at this trade, 1 milk, 2/3 butter, or 1.5 milk, one butter, the price of butter is 1.5 milk.
question.
Number 5, this is where, remember, the cigarettes is money, and we're going to try to think about what happens if there's more money, more cigarettes, which is just like printing more money, or less. Number 5 says, suppose that cigarettes are used as money in a POW camp. The price of one butter is 3 cigarettes. The price of one milk is 2 cigarettes, just like before. Suppose the supply of cigarettes doubles, and the MV equals PQ equation, V and Q are constant. What is the new price of butter and milk? Now, the V and Q stay the same, and the amount of money doubles. What happens to price? It's just going to double. Well, there's more cigarettes to be used as money, but they're not getting any more parcels. It's the same amount of goods to be traded. And so, the price just happens to go up. And so, yeah, they have a lot more money, but things are twice as high because they can't buy more stuff than there is to buy. Number 9. Butter was 3 cigs, so butter is now 6 cigs. Milk is 4 cigarettes. Number 6 says, regarding the previous question, what is the real price of butter in terms of milk? So now we're going back to those real prices again. Now we'll do the same thing. What is the real price of butter in terms of milk? I'm going to first make a table that says 6 cigs buys. I know that 6 cigarettes can now buy 1 butter, or 1.5 milk. 4 cigs buys 2/3 butter. And it's asking what is the real price of butter in terms of milk, so we'll know the number of milk that tends to be traded per butter. And this trade is 1.5 milk, 1 butter. And here is 2/3 butter, 1 milk. Three halves. Number 4 says, what is the real price of butter in terms of milk? Let me also give it, this is the same thing as 1.5. Before, when we only had half the amount of money, in number 4, the real price of butter is 1.5 milk. Now, when we have twice the amount of cigarettes, the real price of butter is still 1.5 milk. Well, this is trying to show these real prices, they don't depend on the amount of money that's out there. And it shouldn't. Because we're just trading milk and butter, and the amount of milk and butter remains the same. Those terms of trade, the rate at which we trade milk for butter, it shouldn't depend on how much money is out there. The money is just helping us do trade efficiently. It's not letting us get more of one thing or less than another. Okay, now, number 7. This is referring you back to that MV equals PQ equation that I'm told thus far y'all are doing very well on the test with. Here's why I like this POW camp metaphor. I think it really helps you see how this equation would work. See it in the real economy. says in our POW camp, which we are using as a metaphor for any economy, in the MV equals PQ equation, what does Q represent? What's that? Quantity. Quantity of what? Of those parcels, right? Exactly. You know, wealth here is just the parcels that they get. And so that Q is just, it could be any number of parcels, but I think it makes sense to call Q as one parcel. Because you might remember when we talk about our economy, much more complex than the POW camp, we talk about our wealth, we talk about the number of baskets that we consume. And what's in those baskets? Remember, in those baskets are just the things that we normally consume. It tends to be, I think it was on 42% houses. But our government, when they're measuring how wealthy we are, they go out and they try to figure out what most people are buying, and they come up with a concept of a basket of that stuff, and then they say we're wealthier where we can afford more of that stuff. But when I say that stuff, it's hard for us to envision. Even if I say it's the stuff that we typically buy, it's just still hard for us to envision because we know different people buy different things. And most of us don't know what the average person consumes. But here, we know exactly what it is. Because the only thing that comes into that camp are those parcels. And so they either get more of it or less of it. And the camp gets wealthier when they get more parcels. And so in number 8, it says, in our POW camp, which we are using as a metaphor for any economy, in the MV equals PQ equation, what does P represent? Price of... No, not price of butter.
Butter and milk.
You're getting close.
Cigarettes.
No, close. You're right. The prices of things.
The price of one.
Yes. Yes. Our quantity, that basket of stuff we consume, are those parcels that has the biscuits and the chocolate and the jam and stuff in it. And this price, the price of stuff, is the price of that basket, which is here just the price of that one parcel. And I want to be explicit because I want you to get a better idea of like what our government is trying to measure and measure these baskets. I'm going to write this in a second. It is the price of one parcel. And some of you want to say cigarettes, and I'm glad you did because you're trying to bring money into it. The price is here in terms of money. What I'm going to write is that P in the MV equals P equation for the POW camp. P is the number of cigarettes required to buy one parcel. To buy all the stuff that goes into one parcel. They don't actually sell whole parcels or buy whole parcels in the camp. They sell the individual stuff. That's the point. But if you were going to go out and use your cigarettes and buy all the stuff that goes into one parcel, and you buy it all, the number of cigarettes it would take to buy all that stuff is P. And that would be the price of one parcel. So my number of cigarettes required to buy all the foods comprising one parcel. And I want to be explicit because you know that thing we call that basket that Americans consume, it doesn't exist. Nobody goes out and buys that basket. It's a concept. And so when they're trying to measure P, the price of those baskets, they can't go to a market and say, what are these baskets selling for? They have to say, what does it cost in terms of dollar bills to buy all that stuff that goes into the basket? Just like here, they didn't buy and sell parcels. They bought and sold the individual stuff that comprised the parcels. But P is the number of cigarettes that would take to buy them. Okay, let's flip it over. These next questions are something that anybody should be able to do. I think you're going to have a really easy time with it because it's very intuitive. I want to talk about real and nominal prices in our world and how they change over time. We know that prices of stuff change all the time, but inflation changes all the time too. We want to know something about real prices. And I want to think in terms of salary. Like you're going to get a salary, as you work, your salary is going to rise and rise and rise. You'll make more money the more you work. But also inflation is going to be going up. And sometimes you'll get a raise, you'll get more money, but you don't know whether you can actually buy more stuff because prices have gone up too. And if you're wondering that, you understand things perfectly because the point of working is to buy stuff. And so when you want to know how much money you're making, you don't want to know just the dollar bill. You want to know the number of baskets of stuff you can buy. I'm going to be just writing what's at the top of the sheet here. We want to know real salary. And the real salary is just equal to nominal salary. That's the number of dollar bills you get. When you hear salary, you're thinking of nominal salary. Divided by P, the general price level of the economy. P equals price of a basket. And of course, if you just arrived at class for the first time this semester, you wouldn't know what I meant by a basket. But I'm hoping by now you do. That parcel in the POW camp, that's our metaphor for these baskets. What I want you to be able to do, and of course, that is a P. And when we have inflation, P goes up. The price of a basket, the price of stuff we buy goes up. And I want to be able to give to you, tell you whether nominal salary is going up or down, how much, and what's happening with inflation, and you tell me whether real salary is increasing. Questions 9 through 15 are all asking, is a person's real salary going up? And all it's really asking, I'm telling you what's happening in the numerator, I'm telling you what's happening in the denominator, and then you just tell me whether the fraction is going up, going down, staying the same, or sometimes if I don't give you enough information. The first one's going to seem kind of really easy, but I'm going to write down how we do it anyway. Number 9 says, suppose that nominal salary rises 3% and inflation is 2%. So the number of dollar bills you take home from work goes up 3%. The prices of stuff you buy goes up 2%. So in this real salary, in this fraction over here, the numerator is going up 3%. The denominator is going up 2%. So is this fraction going up? It's going up. So rise. Suppose nominal salary rises 3%. And inflation is 5%. And what's happening with real salary? Going down. Fall. And as you work, this is something you want to look out for. A lot of times people do get raises, but their real salary is actually falling. Number 11. Nominal salary is unchanged and inflation is 5%. So nothing's happening in the numerator, but inflation is 5%. You're not bringing home any more money, but the price of stuff's going up. Rise, fall, fall. Told you to do 12. Those nominal salary is unchanged and deflation is 1%. That means prices are going down 1%. All right. You're not bringing home any more dollar bills, but the stuff you buy, the price is going down, so you can buy more of it. That doesn't happen to us today, at least not since 1971, because we're always printing money. But it used to be a real thing. And it used to be workers would often take wage cuts because prices were falling and their wages were getting too high. Suppose nominal salary rises, I don't tell you how much, and deflation of some amount takes place. Or deflation is 1%. Up means you're getting more dollar bills at home. Down means price of stuff's going down. You're definitely doing much better. Nominal salary falls, I don't tell you how much, and deflation of some sort takes place. You can't tell. You bring how much dollar bills, but the price of stuff's going down, but I'm not telling you how much. So, no way for you to know. 15, nominal salary rises, and inflation of some sort takes place. Not going to stay the same. Because this could be going up 1,000%, not just 1%. I'm just not giving you enough information. All I'm telling you is that you're bringing home more money, but stuff costs more. It doesn't tell you anything. Let me do clickers real quick. Go ahead and put it on channel 46. We'll do one question, and that's it. Just do it. Okay, the poll is open. You can just chime in.
Didn't read the question the first time, so I was like, yeah, might as well read it this time. I had A at first, I was like, that's not.